Hey friends, welcome to this week's episode of Not Your Mama's Podcast. The title of this episode is Autism Resources and Consulting, and I am so excited and honored to have Board Certified Behavior Analyst Andrea Mathews on. She is the co-founder of Family Framing Autism Resources and Consulting, and we are so honored to have you on, Andrea. So before we get started, what got you interested or started in the autism field and business?
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to talk to you and your wonderful followers. What got me started? So honestly, I was in my undergrad work, and I think that at that time I wanted to be a therapist or a social worker or something. And I wanted to get through school faster. And so I was looking for a paid internship opportunity. And I had no idea what applied behavior analysis was. I had no idea about autism. I had no family members at the time that had a diagnosis or anything. And I ended up finding this opportunity. And I remember like the first day that I came in for work, and I started learning about the therapy, learning about how it was helpful for, gaining this skill, and we're teaching these words and all of these wonderful things. And I fell in love with it right away. And I started to see the changes in myself and the way that I was treating people who were having difficulties often during the day, and how compassionate that made me as an individual, and how much more understanding I had. And then I finally started to be able to see and understand their personalities as the challenging behavior went down, because we were helping them find better methods to be able to communicate and get their needs met. And so they weren't needing to have the challenging behaviors that had just become part of who they were when they had started services. And that was addicting to me. So I finished up I went to grad school, I became a board certified behavior analyst, but there was something still missing. I feel like ABA is wonderful in so many ways, and it can be so helpful, but one of the chinks in the armor currently is there's just not enough focus helping parents and training parents to get the same effect at home, to be able to do the same things that we're training all of our therapists that are doing amazing work and helping children be happier, not more distressed and sadder. And there are so many parents out there who are feeling lost and overwhelmed, and you can see it in Facebook groups and on Instagram of oh, my child is doing this, or they're hurting themselves because these things are happening. How can I help them? How can I stop these things from happening? How can I support them? How can I what should I expect? How can I get services? Where can I find help? And I feel like there's that element there where if we strengthened the parents, everyone in that child's community would be more successful right away. And so that's why I started Family Framing Autism Resources and Consulting, because I just wanted to focus on what the parents needed, whether their child was in ABA, or maybe you're against ABA, or maybe you're in occupational therapy or speech therapy or whatever.
Can you break that down? Because I'm unfamiliar.
Yeah.
What is ABA?
Yeah, ABA. So it stands for Applied Behavior Analysis. And essentially what it is it takes behavioral sciences, and there's a lot of history of all of the science of different things. And it takes, how can we manipulate the environment to create different behaviors? So it's a lot of okay, we know that there's a certain reaction when this thing happens in the environment. So can we remove that blockage, or can we teach that blockage is okay, and this is how we react to it appropriately? Things like maybe if they hear know that they can't have something, that's even for typical children, that is something that's really
very
difficult.
Reactive.
Yeah. And so that's something that we might not be able to remove, because unfortunately it's part of life that we're going to hear no. Even as an adult, I hear it all the time. I don't love it, but I'm able to handle that, and I'm able to problem solve around those situations. And so being able to manipulate the environment around the child to be able to safely teach them how to react to no without engaging in really big, possibly dangerous problem behavior is just one example of ways that applied behavior analysis can be used. Sometimes what you find with the autism community is, it's not a learning disability so much as they just need to be taught in different ways. They just need the environment to be a little bit more cut and clear to make the understanding of how to manipulate their own environment to get their needs met more obvious to them. And once they see that, oh, all I need to do is just go up and give this little pitcher to my mom and she's going to give me my favorite drink or whatever. We don't need to engage in any of the problem behavior. We don't need to hurt ourselves. We don't need to hurt anyone else, because now we have a way, we've created an environment where that individual understands, this is how I get my needs met, and it's reliable and I understand it. So I find that that's different sometimes for them versus children who will just pick up on social cues automatically.
Yeah. So what is your approach to coaching parents and families with autistic children?
Yeah. So we use a twofold approach. So obviously we're focusing on, making protocols that fit their family, that fit their child's needs. So I'm obviously, gonna have that tailor-made to what their needs are. Okay, we're working on a morning routine so we can get to school on time without having a massive World War III blow up about it or whatever. And so it will create and we'll train how we're going to get that done and how we're going to meet those goals. And then I'll meet with them and we'll talk about these things and any problems that they might be having. But also something that I find is really important, and sometimes something that can really block parents from being successful or being able to start these things, is the mindset work that's required to be able to do this. And making sure that you have, we can talk about this a little later, but I've had so many experiences where I'm explaining something, okay, we want to get this done. And I can tell in their face that they're like, okay, this sounds like something I should be able to do, but the feelings of overwhelm or, maybe they're feeling discouraged, or maybe they're afraid, or whatever it is. And those feelings, the thoughts that they're having about whatever it is that they're going through with their child are so overwhelming that they're not able to actually move forward in these things. And so I find that both of those things are extremely necessary. And that's something that you might not find with the typical ABA or speech or occupational therapy, where somebody's willing to okay, but let's go through what things are you feeling? Let's make sure that this is all out. Let's manage our minds around this, because if we're not managing our minds, then there's no way that we can fight that battle inside of ourselves while we're trying to correct or change challenging behavior for your child. That's too much. It's too hard. So taking care of both of those fronts is really important.
Yeah, I think it must be mentally exhausting, trying to do the routine, and then you see failures in the routine and keep going and going. And, sometimes you just want to give up, but then you still have to keep going. And it's it really is mentally taxing. I'm totally.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
So it's nice to have someone like you to help them, keep their mind right, keep them on track, and to not give up. Because I can see, even with kids that, aren't autistic, sometimes you feel like giving up because it's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's totally understandable. It's totally understandable, but we can't stay there forever. Our children need us. Our children need us. So that's not a possibility forever. So
yeah, no, totally. I would love to hear a recent success story that you've had.
I think that right along with this was something that really oh my gosh, mindset really is so important. But I was having a conversation, and so there are some statistics out there that if you have a child with autism, the chances of your marriage having difficulties and that marriage failing are much higher than the typical rate, at least in the United States. And I was working with this couple, this husband and this wife, and she was talking about, he's working 3 jobs and he's so busy, but he never helps with him, and I'm having to do all of the work with this. And I had a moment, and I just had an inkling of there's something else going on. And he literally said, well, I don't feel like I can engage with him and play with him like that because he just hates me. And I was like, immediately, I was like, oh my goodness. Like, of course you feel like you can't help your son. Of course you feel like you're not making a difference. Of course you feel like there's blockage there and there's a barrier there between you being able to support your son and help him, because you feel like, based on how you're reading his behaviors and the difficulties that he's having, that he hates you. And so there was a situation, and I had to sit there and I had to go through the mind work with him, and I had to like, okay, like, let's talk about your son here. Let's talk about, and he was able to come out of that and be like, I understand that my son likes things done a certain way. And he was, what was happening is, this child was liking things done, certain routines done with the help of mom. And so when dad would do it, because mom was out of the house for a day or like whatever, because dad was so busy, usually we were seeing more problem behavior. And dad was taking that upon himself as like, my son just hates me. He wants nothing to do with me. And I had to sit there and I was like, okay, let's do some mind work. Let's think about this, because this is holding you back from being the parent you want to be for your son, and what he wants to be for you. And we were able to like come through that. And that relationship was able to heal, because he started to see like, oh, I understand that my son likes things done a certain way and he's kind of rigid in these areas, and that's okay. And the best way to help him become more flexible is to keep going. And I told him, I was like, I want you to do it 5 more times. And I want you to support him through those routines 5 more times. And by the 4th time, you're going to see that he's totally accepting of it. And I was wrong. By the 2nd time, the next time that he did the routine, his son was so much better with the routine. And he, this dad was like, oh my gosh, I was wrong this whole time. And it was like keeping me back from everything. And play got better, and his son started following directions better. And it was all around so much better. But that was a recent, like, that was so good for me. But it was all based on that mindset that we were just talking about, of like these things that we're keeping. Dad was trying to do all of these things, but becoming so discouraged, because in the back of his head, his brain was telling him, my son hates me and doesn't want anything to do with me. So that was really life-changing for me, but especially
and for them too. I'm so great.
Yeah.
Like, that's a really beautiful story, because they were able to heal and bond, and oh, that's such a great story.
No, I love that story.
So basically, why are you the best option for parents who are looking for assistance for their autistic child?
Yeah, I think there might be a number of scenarios. If you're feeling, if you're having these situations where you have these pervasive thoughts that are keeping you back, like come to me, let's work on those. Let's get you more, more resilient, so that you can be there for your child like you want to be. If you're feeling that exhaustion, if you're feeling that burnout frequently, if you're feeling that discouragement all the time, let's get your mind in the right place. There might be other situations. For instance, where I live, it's really, really common that you will get a diagnosis of autism in your family. And then in order to start ABA, you're maybe waitlisted for 6 to 9 months. If you want to get a jump start in creating a therapeutic environment in your home, in your family, before you even start services, let's do it. I think that that's a great idea. The more information that you can get yourself consuming about this, the more power you have for your child, the better you can advocate for their needs. Maybe you are receiving ABA services, but you just wish that there was more training options for you as a parent. That's why I started this. Let's support you so that you can better support everything that you are doing in therapy with your child, and so that you can better advocate of like, hey, you know what, ABA providers, I would really like to work on this certain behavior, and I'd like to do it in this certain way, and I've seen success with this. That's also really, really great for ABA providers to see you as a strong advocate for your child, see you as a knowledgeable source that they can count on as they continue to provide ABA services. Maybe you haven't had a super positive experience with an ABA provider. There are some out there that maybe are not doing the best possible work that they could. And you knowing how to do what your child needs, you knowing how to teach your child new things, better ways of getting around, better ways of getting their needs met is going to be the best thing that you can possibly do if you're looking for another provider, or if you're just wanting to see what you can do on your own. Everybody needs support with these things. And if you find yourself wanting that professional touch as you continue to maneuver around this diagnosis and for your child, that's why we're here. That's what we do. So
awesome, Andrea. That's so awesome. Thank you for all that information. It was wonderful. And I have 4 questions I ask all my guests, and I can't wait to know what your answers are. So my first question to you is, who and what inspires you?
I feel like I've had a couple of mentors. One of my biggest mentors right now, she's her name is Courtney Gray, and you can find her at Courtney Gray Coaching. But she has been amazing to help me be able to manage my mind better around things, around starting this business, around all of this stuff. She is really, really awesome. And she's very, very woman empowered in all of her messages. So she's super great. I love her.
Yeah, I love Courtney too. She's been on the show. I think she is awesome too, if you ever want to check her out. Great answer. I love that. And then so my second question to you is, what is something you wished you knew when you were younger?
Something I wish I knew when I was younger. I feel like when I was younger, and maybe this will apply to some of your people who are listening in, but I feel like when I was younger, my brain would tell me, if you don't have it right the first time, it's going to be a big problem. And it really stopped me from taking action.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish that when I was younger, I would have known that taking action and making mistakes is part of the process and part of learning. And sometimes the only way that you can get it right is to get it wrong the first time. And that's maybe not fun, but that's more what I live by now. And it's a lot more active oriented. It's a lot less passive, and I'm finding a lot more success in those thoughts rather than waiting till I have things perfect.
Yeah, no, that's always a great reminder, because like you said, everything's mental, and we got to work through those mental blocks and barriers. And that's definitely one of them.
Yeah, for real.
So my third question is, what's the essential part of your daily routine?
Journaling. That is how I get my mind straight, and I'll write down all of my thoughts, good, bad, indifferent, ugly, pretty, it doesn't matter. That is huge for me. That's where I can sit there and be like, am I really thinking that? Oh my goodness. And being able to just be aware of my thoughts and being able to be an observer rather than just like jumping from thought to thought and just being a wild mess. I feel like that is something that for me is so important to help me be aware of my thoughts and making sure that my thoughts are serving me and that I'm not the servant to my thoughts.
Ooh, I like that. Great. And then my fourth and last final question is, the best advice you've ever received.
I think the best advice I've ever received is that creating value in your environment is the best possible way that you can help everyone around you. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's a lot of people, at least growing up, there was a lot of people that, be humble and be modest. And I interpreted that as being self-deprecating and, oh no, I don't have any abilities. Oh no, don't, whatever. And I think that when I heard that, I started to realize that I was holding myself back, but I was also not offering help and value that I could to the world. And that was a big mistake. There were a lot of people that possibly suffered because I wasn't sharing what I knew. I wasn't helping where I could. And so I feel like that is some of my favorite advice right now that I've received.
Perfect. I love that. Well, Andrea, thank you so much for being our special guest on this week's episode of Not Your Mama's podcast. And if you would like to reach out to her, all of her links are down below in the show notes. Don't be shy. Go say hi. And thank you everyone for listening to this week's episode of Not Your Mama's podcast. And I'll see you in the next one. Thanks, guys.